In February 2009, I sat in a Starbucks on Palo Alto's University Avenue with a notebook and a problem I couldn't solve. The problem wasn't technical, it was psychological. I had an idea that made perfect sense to me. It was simple, obvious even. But every single person I'd explained it to, investors, engineers, my roommate, my own brother, had the same reaction. They'd nod politely. They'd say it was interesting, and then they'd find a way to change the subject. Nobody said it was a bad idea. They just acted like it wasn't an idea at all. I remember writing in that notebook, either everyone else sees something I don't, or I see something nobody else does. Either way, I'm alone. That idea became a company worth $3.2 billion, but not for another 7 years. And the gap between worth nothing and worth billions wasn't filled with belief or determination or any of the things you're supposed to say in a story like this. It was filled with doubt and silence and the specific grinding work of building something when nobody's watching. The idea came from frustration, not inspiration. I was working as a product manager at a mid-tier software company in San Francisco. Decent job, decent pay. I spent 40 hours a week in meetings where people argued about features that didn't matter, using words that didn't mean anything. One afternoon in November 2008, I remember because it was right after the election, I was sitting through yet another meeting about user engagement optimization. Someone said, "We need better data on how users interact with the product." Someone else said, "We have data. We have tons of data." And the first person said, "But we don't have the right data." This went on for 45 minutes. Walking back to my desk, I realized something obvious. The problem wasn't that we didn't have data. The problem was that we had too much data and no way to ask it questions. Every company had databases full of user behavior, transaction logs, click patterns, but accessing that data required writing SQL queries, which meant involving engineers, which meant tickets, which meant weeks of waiting. What if there was a layer between the database and the human that could interpret natural language questions and return visual answers in real time? Not a dashboard, not a report, a conversation. You'd type, "Show me which features drive the most upgrades," and it would generate the query, run it, and show you a chart, instantly. I thought, this is obvious. Someone must be building this. I spent 2 weeks researching. Nobody was building it. Or rather, people were building pieces of it. Query generators, visualization tools, semantic search, but nobody was combining them into something a non-technical person could actually use. So I decided to build it. I spent 3 months building a prototype at night after work. Basic interface, crude natural language processing, could connect to a PostgreSQL database and answer maybe 10 types of questions. It was ugly, but it worked. In February 2009, I started showing it to people. My first meeting was with a former colleague who'd left our company to join a startup that had just raised $8 million. I figured he'd understand the problem immediately. I walked him through a demo. He watched politely. When I finished, he said, "This is basically just a better dashboard, right?" I said, "No, it's not a dashboard. You don't have to configure anything. You just ask questions." He said, "Right, but someone still has to set up the data connections, and the queries have to be written in advance, don't they?" I explained that the queries weren't pre-written. The system generated them based on natural language input. He looked confused. Then he said, "So it's like a chatbot for databases." Sort of, but smarter. He nodded. Interesting. That word, interesting. He didn't follow up. Over the next 2 months, I took 15 more meetings. Investors, potential co-founders, people who worked at companies that might be customers. The pattern was always the same. They'd watch the demo, they'd say it was clever, then they'd explain why it wouldn't work. The queries won't scale. Natural language is too ambiguous. People want control, not automation. Business intelligence is a solved problem. Nobody was mean about it. They were reasonable, thoughtful even. They'd point out technical challenges I hadn't considered, market dynamics I didn't understand, competitors I didn't know existed. And maybe they were right. I wasn't a database expert. I wasn't an AI researcher. I built this thing in 3 months with duct tape and pattern matching. But here's what bothered me. None of them had actually tried to use it. They evaluated it as a concept, They didn't test it as a tool. By April, I'd stopped taking meetings, not because I gave up on the idea, but because I realized meetings were the wrong format. If people didn't understand it from a demo, I needed to put it in their hands and let them discover it. I quit my job in May 2009. Not dramatically. I gave 2 weeks' notice. I told my manager I was pursuing something independently. He wished me luck and probably forgot about it the next day. I had $43,000 in savings. I calculated I could live for 18 months if I was careful. The plan was simple. Build a version good enough that people would pay for it. No funding, no co-founder, no launch event. Just make something useful and see if anyone wanted it. I rented a desk at a co-working space in Soma for $200 a month. Every morning I'd show up at 7 a.m., work until 7 p.m., then go home and keep working until I couldn't focus anymore. It wasn't romantic, it was just time passing. I rebuilt the natural language processor from scratch 3 times. The first version could handle simple questions. The second version could handle complex questions but was too slow. The third version was fast but kept misinterpreting user intent. By August, I had something that worked about 70% of the time. Good enough to be useful, not good enough to sell. I needed to test it with real users. I made a list of 20 small companies, early-stage startups, local businesses, nonprofits, and offered to let them use it for free for 3 months. No strings attached, just wanted feedback. 19 ignored me. 1 replied, a woman named Sarah who ran a 15-person edtech startup in Berkeley. She said, "I don't really understand what this does from your email, but we're desperate for better analytics. When can you come by?" I drove to Berkeley the next day. Sarah's company had a database full of student activity data, which courses they took, how they performed, where they struggled. They wanted to identify patterns to improve their product, but their only engineer was too busy building features to run reports. I connected my tool to their database. Within 5 minutes, Sarah was asking it questions. Which students are most at risk of dropping out? What topics do users struggle with most? How does performance correlate with time spent on practice exercises? She didn't need to know SQL. She didn't need to file a ticket. She just asked. After an hour, she looked up and said, "This is going to change how we make decisions. Not this is interesting, not this is clever. This is going to change how we make decisions." I left her office and sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing. 1 person got it. Sarah introduced me to 2 other founders in her network. They both agreed to try it. By November, I had 5 companies using it. Still free, still calling it a beta. But something was happening. They were using it every day, multiple times a day. In December, one of them, a small logistics company in Oakland, asked if they could pay me to keep using it after the beta ended. I said, "How much were you thinking?" They said, "What do you normally charge?" I had no idea. I made up a number, $500. They said, "That seems low. How about $1,200? I signed my first paying customer in January 2010, 11 months after I'd started. $1,200 a month, $14,400 a year. It barely covered rent, but it was revenue, which meant this wasn't a hobby anymore. It was a business. Over the next 6 months, I signed 8 more customers through referrals. No marketing, no sales team, just people who used it, liked it, and told someone else. By July 2010, we had 32 customers, $38,000 in monthly recurring revenue, and 2 employees. I still hadn't raised funding. I still hadn't done any press. I still hadn't launched publicly. We were growing, but slowly, steadily, quietly. And I started to wonder, was this it? Was this the ceiling? In March 2011, I got an email from someone at a company called Born Tech. At the time, they were maybe 80 employees, growing fast, but not yet the giant they'd become. The email said, "We're looking for a better way for our internal teams to access data without bothering engineers. Heard about you from a mutual contact. Can we talk?" I took the call. They wanted to roll it out to their entire company, product managers, marketing, customer support, everyone. I said, "How many users?" They said, "About 60 right now, probably 100 by end of year." This was bigger than any customer I'd had. If it worked for them, it could work for any growing tech company. We did a 1-month trial. Within 2 weeks, they were running 400 queries a day. They signed an annual contract for $72,000. That one deal doubled our revenue overnight. But more important than the money was what happened next. Born Tech's VP of Product wrote a blog post about how they used data. He mentioned our tool in passing, didn't even link to our website, just mentioned it. Within a week, I got 67 inbound emails from other companies asking for access. That's when I realized we'd been growing slowly because we were in stealth. Not intentionally, I just didn't have time for marketing. But the slowness had forced us to build something that really worked instead of something that looked good in demos. Now, with one piece of organic exposure, companies that actually needed this could find us. I hired 2 more engineers and a part-time salesperson. We built a self-serve sign-up flow. We launched a basic website with pricing. $2,000 a month for teams under 50, enterprise pricing for larger companies. By December 2011, we had 180 customers and were doing $380,000 in monthly recurring revenue. In January 2012, I raised a Series A, $8 million at a $35 million valuation. The same investors who told me the idea wouldn't scale in 2009 were now calling it obvious and perfectly timed. Nothing about the product had fundamentally changed. The market had just caught up to what I'd been building. I won't walk you through every funding round, every acquisition offer we turned down, every feature launch. The details blur together after a while. What I remember are the moments that surprised me. Like in 2014, when a Fortune 500 company paid us $1.2 million for an annual contract, and I realized we'd crossed into a completely different category of business. Or in 2016, when we hit $100 million in annual revenue, and I understood for the first time that we were going to be worth more than I'd ever imagined. We went public in 2018. The opening valuation was $2.1 billion. 3 months later, after strong earnings, we crossed $3 billion. My stake was worth just over $1 billion on paper. I didn't feel different. I know that sounds like false humility, but it's not. The number was abstract. What felt real was that the thing I'd built in 2009 that everyone said was interesting was now used by 11 million people across 47,000 companies. The idea hadn't changed. The execution had just been given time. Sometimes people ask me now, how did you know your idea would work when everyone said it wouldn't? I didn't. I didn't have some special vision. I didn't ignore advice because I was confident. I ignored it because I didn't know what else to do. When people tell you your idea is worth nothing, they're usually not being cruel. They're being rational. They're evaluating based on what exists now, what's been tried before, what the market says is possible. And most of the time they're right. Most ideas are worth nothing. Most ambitious projects fail. Most people who quit their jobs to chase something end up regretting it. But here's what I learned. Worth nothing and worth billions aren't assessments of ideas. They're assessments of timing. An idea is worth nothing until the right person builds it at the right moment in the right way. And you never know which moment that is until you're already in it. In 2009, my idea was worth nothing because I was the only one who needed it to exist. By 2011, thousands of companies needed it and didn't know it yet. By 2018, millions of people couldn't imagine working without it. The idea didn't change. The world just moved into position around it. So when someone tells you your idea is worth nothing, believe them. They're probably right. Just don't let that stop you from building it anyway, because worth is a conclusion, not a prediction. And conclusions take time.